sacred and holy are usually an image of a supreme being that you kneel and worship. You pray, and in our area, we mostly ask for mercy, help. So it's a power, and we have this image of what God must look like, or Christ figure, or Blessed Virgin Mary, something of that category that you don't touch. But you bow, you kneel, and you worship. To me, that's what sacred is. You know? It's a special area where sometimes they'll say we're not even good enough to be side by side with them because they're so perfect that we don't belong in their level. And to me, that's what sacred is, something that we always bow and kneel to. Okay, the reason I asked that is we're going to be talking about issues here that I want you to keep those words in mind. Keep those words in mind, and when we get done with this class, I want you to define sacred again, okay, and holy again at the end of the class, okay. In 1600s, 1700s, the French trappers came into the Great Lakes area. They trapped around there, and they ran out of pelts, fur to trap. So they moved further west, and they came upon a group of Indians. And these Indians told them, go back. Don't come any further. Up to that point, they worked with the Ojibwa. Today we call them Chippewa. But they're known as Ojibwa, the Cree, Menominee. Those are all basically same group, same language. So they went back to them. They asked them and said, who are those people? And the old timer said, Nadawesi. It went like that. Nadawesi. The French translator said, snake. Snake people. So they called that division Nadawesi. Nadawesi. In French, if you take French, some words, when you pluralize it, like the English plural S, in French, they use OUX, Nadawisu. Eventually, just that part come out. Word Sioux. And they found out more tribes as they moved further west. And they found out that there were 3 different dialects, and we all speak basically the same language. So they kind of categorized us under this, that we're all Sioux Indians. So for centuries, they think we're called little snakes. And that's recorded. So people, anthropologists, historians, look at that early recording. And since it's recorded, that's what it must mean. You know, little snake. I wrote a textbook, you know, reading and writing Lakota language. And in there, I found that explanation, so I put that in. And after it was printed, about a year or so later, a woman called me from California. And she said, you wouldn't believe this, but she said, she went to the bookstore and asked the clerk, she said, did my book come in? Jokingly, she said that, you know. Here, she gave her my book. So she took it home and read the introduction where this was in there. And she said, I want to explain that to you because I grew up with the Ojibwa. She flew up here, came to see me. We went out and had coffee and visited. When this old timer said, Nadawasi, what he was trying to say was, they're from the snake-like river. That's what he was trying to say. But the French translator just saw the motion and said snakes. Throughout history, this is what happened with translators, interpreters. Crazy Horse told Commissioner of the Army Captain Generals, he said, give me the guns and ammunitions. He said, I'll stop that Nez Perce before he gets into Canada. The interpreter said, what he said was, give me guns and ammunition, and I'll kill all of you. So that's when they came after. So translations were really bad in those days. I don't know, there's one division that the trappers ran into. The D dialect. There's Wakpetru, Wakpe, Kute, CC3, et Sinte. These were the 4 divisions that are under the D dialect. So I don't know which one they contacted first. Today, Wakpetru, they've announced it as Wapton, North Dakota. That's supposed to be Wakpetru. Yeah. Wakpekute is the shooting leaves. They live in a wooded area and they hunt through the leaves and look like they're shooting at leaves, you know. And CC3, Today it's Sistine. White people couldn't say Sisitwa, so they changed it to Sistine. And then Sinte became Flandreau Indian tribe, and then some of them went to Sinte, Nebraska. Yeah. East of this, these are east of the Missouri River. They also discovered there was Ihanktua. Ihanktuani. And this is the An dialect. Ihanktua, Ihanktuani. Again, English speakers couldn't say the words, so they changed that to Yankton. Yankton Sioux. And these are the An speakers. Today, you find them in Canada, Sioux Valley. And then you go west to Poplar, Montana. That's where a lot of them end up, in Montana. That's the An dialect. So this is what they discovered. And then later on, when they crossed the Missouri, they come across the Teton. Teton, the prairie people. And they consider that as one. So when they call about the Sioux Nation, the 7 council fires, Ocheti, Shakoi. Ocheti is fireplace, there's 7 of them. And this is what they count, these divisions. Under Teton, there are 7. Sichangu, Ogallala, Sihasapa, Hochawaju, sometimes they call them Nikoju. Itazibcho, let's see. Ohe Nupa. And forgot what they call Standing Rock. I'll have to find a word for Standing Rock. There's a Lakota word for Standing Rock. Oh, Hunkpapka. Hookah. Ha. Without the diacritics, you can say hunkpapa, but it's hunkpa pha. Hunkpa pha is the point of the buffalo horn. So under Titua, you have 7 additional divisions. Sichangu, today that's the Rosebud Sioux tribe. Oglala is Pine Ridge Sioux tribe. Sihasapa, Hochwoju, Itazipcho, Oohenupa, all those 4 are within the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe. All 4 divisions. And then Hunkpapcha is Standing Rock. Standing Rock Sioux. That's the L dialect. That's the L dialect. Under each one, there are additional, what you would call tioshpai. And we'll talk more about that later. Oshpaye is a small group, okay, that lives together. T is a place to live. You know, you live someplace, you know. Say, Jim Mission T. Jim lives in Mission. St. Francis Dawa T. I live at St. Francis. So T implies where you live, or who lives with you. So a small group that lives together is called a tioshpai. And within that tioshpai, to be a member, number 1, you have to be of the same bloodline. Okay? You have to be of the same bloodline of that tioshpai. Okay? Number 2, you become a member through marriage. So, bloodline, marriage, and number 3, this is really important, adoption. Sometimes they call that Hookah. That's a very important ceremony. You become a member of a tioshpai through Hookah or adoption. You become a full member of that tioshpai. Your whole tioshpai will accept you. You might befriend somebody. We all did. You might become very close with somebody. The 2 of you can share and keep confident things for each other. Somebody that you can honestly share things with and not be afraid it'll be talked about. Somebody that you can trust. And somebody that you can take care of. If anything happens to that person, you have the ability to take care of it. and that somebody feels the same way about you, he or she will take care of it. And sometimes this happens between a man and a woman. They become very close. There's no romance, but it's just like finding a sister or brother that you share. So a man and a woman can become this. And you introduce each other to your tioshpai and say, we want to have a hookah. So your tioshpai will accept him or her or his tioshpai will accept you. It's a very important ceremony. Sometimes people think that you do that because you want something, but that's not the case. Or sometimes people will ask you to tie a feather on a child, and you adopt that child. The moment you tie that feather, that child becomes yours. And that child is supposed to serve you, work with you. But sometimes parents do that, so that they'll ask you to practically raise that child. She needs a pair of shoes, she needs this and that, And that's your hookah daughter, why don't you get her this, or,
Is that similar to like the Catholic godparents?
Similar to that, yeah. But sometimes people take advantage of that, not fully understanding why you do those things. Because there's always a commitment to each other on these things. Someday you might not be able to do something, and your hookah brother or sister will be there and say, hey, let me do it. Vice versa, You see him or her in a difficult situation, you're going to go there and rescue, and you become very close. So an adoption like that, you become a member of a tioshpai. And to begin with, you come from two tioshpai. Your mother's side and your father's side. So you belong to two tioshpai. When a young couple gets together, they decide which tioshpai they're going to be with and take their part. If the couple decides to go to his tioshpai, everything she learns about her tioshpai, she'll have to put that away and adopt his ways and become a member of that. You never go into a tioshpai and try and change him. That's impossible. If you decide to go into her tioshpai, then he has to adopt his tioshpai ways. So a long time ago there was matchmaking. Your parents will match you with somebody whose tioshpai is very similar to yours, because each tioshpai is different. They all have their own characteristics and personality. So your parents want you to get into a tioshpai that's not going to change you too much. if you're going to go into that tioshpai. And that was a way of keeping the family very strong, because everybody has a responsibility. You don't go into a tioshpai and do nothing. You're going to do your part. And that's what makes the tioshpai strong and work well. So whenever there's a gathering, a big gathering, there's a lot of courtship, and even at a Sundance, while the Sundance goes on, the young people kind of spark each other, kind of flirt around, trying to snag. And sometimes that happens, while the Sundance goes on, or a powwow. But they make sure that you know each other well before you settle. They're going to insist on that. Sometimes people don't get together for 2 or 3 years because they learn about each other. So you have to know your partner. You now have to know what he or she is like, what's her likes, what's her dislikes, or his. You talk. You learn about each other's family, because you're going to live with them, one or the other. So you don't just meet somebody and then decide to stay together. You don't do that. No.
Nowadays they even have reality shows about in-laws from hell and stuff like that, because people didn't check into what type of family.
Yeah, they run into all kinds of problems. They run into some terrible people because they don't know. And they're trapped. In most cases, they'll trap you. Make sure you can't get out. So courtship is very important in those days. And they always say if a man has a beautiful daughter, a lot of young men will be interested. And they'll bring him horses. And he'll look at the horses and he can tell what kind of a man he is, just the way the horses look. He can take them or refuse. It's a gift, So they say sometimes a man with a beautiful daughter could end up with a lot of horses, because all these guys want to show off to the young girl and bring him these beautiful horses, but it's her. She decides. And she was guarded very carefully. She was always with an older woman to protect her. So we'll get into that as we go along in this course. We'll get into those things in more detail. But this whole course is based on a way of life, and also what is a medicine man? What is a medicine woman? How do they become a medicine man or a woman? What are spirits? When they talk about spirits, what are they? How do you work with them? This course was started by medicine men and associates. When the college started, we organized the medicine men. They were underground. Found them underground in 1968 I discovered some of my relatives who were medicine men. And so we went back to them and brought them into the college for advice. And this set a lot of things in motion. And they started this course. They asked me to translate, and I said, "Why are you doing it?" And they said, "So people will not be afraid of us. If they know us and if they know what we have, if they understand our altar, they will not be afraid." The book I just wrote covers most of that in what happened, how they become one. So when I worked with them, it was quite an experience. Every semester I learned a little more because they explained a little more. I had Stanley Redbird Jr.'s dad working with me. He was chairman of that association. And there are some Lakota words that I asked him to translate for me. Even though I'm a fluent speaker, I grew up with the language, there are some words I didn't know. And he explained, translate those to me. So after about 15 years or so of teaching this class with him, they slowly pulled away and said, "Take over." I couldn't find a replacement. I was trying to get somebody to fill in. I found some Lakota speakers, and I thought they'd be interested, and they teach with me for about 2 semesters, and then they back off. And I asked them why, and some of them said, "I'm afraid I have to walk my talk," you know, because it's a subject that they always say, don't talk about it until you experience it, till you know what it is. So just knowledge doesn't work. You have to have that experience. And when it came to ceremonies, that's when a lot of them back off. You know, they're either too busy or not interested in doing those. But it's a good life, you know. You can do anything you want, you know, and still live that life. And that's what these medicine men are saying. There's nothing wrong in our way of life. You know, as long as we understand what it is and not be afraid. And that's why I ask you those 2 words, because those 2 words come from religious organizations. And they use them to intimidate us. That's sacred, so be careful. You know, if you don't do this, something's going to happen. They always tell us that. And I finally said, "What's going to happen?" "Well, something's going to happen," you know. But they won't tell you. It's just a way of putting fear in you to control you. And they say, "Well, that's sacred," you know. So be careful. And the reason I ask you to keep those 2 words in mind is that, and I hope you listen carefully, because at the end of the course, you're going to find out that there's no mystery in Lakota culture. There's no mystery. There are no miracles. You know, everything we do is reality based. we know what and who we work with. One of the main reasons also that they started this course was when the college started, we had a nursing program. And when that started, the medicine associates thought that we should have this course, so when these nurses work with a traditional person who practice traditional healings and stuff, these nurses will know and understand what to do. So that's another reason why they started this course, was to work with that nursing program. And it made an impact slowly, because now when a woman is given birth, she can have her woman there that she selected to be present. And when that baby is delivered, this woman will be the first one to reach into the mouth of that child and utter a special prayer. So they allow us to do that now. They allow the young women to take their placenta home and bury them near the home with a ceremony. In some areas they allowed smudging, sage. So a lot of these things are slowly coming back, where we go back to our spiritual ways. Our way is not a religious life. Spirituality is not a religious life. Spirituality is a way of life with respect and honor. And that's what Lakota people's philosophy is. And we'll get into more of that, and as we get into it more, you'll begin to understand why relationship is so important among Lakota people. Why we always look after our relatives. You know. And very confusing sometimes in modern world, you know. And one time, one of the medicine men was invited to Washington, D.C. This church leaders across the country have a national organization, and they invited him to come along. He said, "Come with me and translate for me." So I went with him. It was about a 4-day conference. And one day we had some time, so I took him into town and walked around. Then we went to the Washington Monument. But on the way, I took him through the area where the street people live. How they sleep on those grills and their little shelters, you know, all along. And people walk around with carts with their whole belongings, you know. So he was really watching them. We went to Washington Monument, and somehow we managed to get to the top, you know. We had a good tour, you know, and we came down. We're sitting out there on a bench, and he was watching these people pushing their carts from dump pile to dump pile, trash can, looking for food. Sitting there watching, and he said, "Don't they at least have one relative?" And I said, "I'm sure they do." But I said, "This is how it is out here. You look after yourself, and that's it." Boy, he couldn't believe that. We came home and we had a ceremony. He told the people, he said, "You don't know how lucky you are, you know, that you don't live in a city where nobody cares.